I know we have a number of other people who will be joining us. So let's get this started. Thank you for muting your microphones. There will be times though later. So remember when there's times to ask questions to unmute yourself. I'm Kathy Osborne and I head a business group called the Regional Business Council. And we have a very keen interest in keeping talent in St. Louis. And so part of what we do is we connect with students in the major universities, and we talk to them about coming into the St. Louis marketplace or staying in St. Louis. Part of that is a partnership that we have with the Mosaic program, and I think most of you are well aware of Betsy Cohen and the Mosaic program. And so today what we wanted to do in collaboration is offer you a very special workshop. So in advance, let me apologize for the fact that we can't shake your hand and we can't say hello and we can't get to know you informally, although I know Betsy knows many of you. So thank you for being here. If you are a junior and would like to be part of what's called the Mentor Network, put those applications in now with your school advisor. And we particularly are focused on engineering and business schools. So if you're in those schools and you want to be part of the Mentor Network, where we'll officially give you a business person to connect to, you can sign up for that with your school counselor. So I'm going to introduce somebody that I don't need to introduce, which is Betsy Cohen. She's the executive director of the St. Louis Mosaic Project, which is a program of the World Trade Center. And is partially funded by the St. Louis Economic Partnership. As most of you know, but I want to tell you in case she's been so modest she didn't tell you, she has a prior career at Nestle Purina as Vice President of Marketing. She's a graduate of Wellesley College and Harvard Business School, and she serves on the advisory board for Cortex Diversity, Equity Inclusion Committee, and the SLU Shavitz School of Business. What she has done with the Mosaic Project and her keen interest in our international students and our international colleagues coming into St. Louis is nothing short of remarkable. She's going to introduce the panel. And again, there'll be some questions and there'll be time for you all to ask questions as well. We have 1 hour together. I did, though, wanted to mention my good friend, Ann Marr, and from Worldwide Technology, and she is remarkable. So today you're going to have advantage of one of the most keen thinkers on technology, careers, and a passionate interest in the workforce and in young people. So Ann, I'm so delighted that you took up our ask to be here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Betsy and she'll get this started.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, since the very beginning of the St. Louis Mosaic Project, 8 years ago, actually today is my 8-year anniversary with the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership and the Mosaic Project as the founding executive director. But Kathy has been there right from the start in all ways to be a supporter through the Regional Business Council as we look for talent and how do we attract talent and how do we keep talent to grow the region. I'm going to introduce my 2 co-panelists. I will be moderating, but I'm also going to be a speaker and a panelist with Ann Marr of Worldwide Technologies and Emily Yang of UHY Accounting. First, as Kathy said, Ann Marr is the Vice President of Global Human Resources at Worldwide Technology, which you'll hear more about the scope of her responsibilities. She's a graduate of Webster University, as well as she's on the board of Maryville. So some of you may be from those various universities. She also is on a number of boards for the region. Her scope of work includes the staffing, policy development, leadership training, supplier diversity programs, and she heads the Worldwide Technology Charitable Foundation. I've also been a presenter with Ann on some of the diversity awards for the region. Secondly, I got to know Emily in her experiences as an international student, and then being a very good communicator and a really intense networker that yielded her job. And you're going to hear a little bit from Emily Yang. Emily graduated from Washington University in August of 2012 with both she has her business degree in business administration and a master's of accounting she got in 2015. So she has really lived the struggle of the path of the international students. And I will also mention that my colleague from the St. Louis Mosaic Project, Bomi Park, is on the screen here. And Bomi had been an international student at McKendree and now is part of our team. And she's also part of the Young Talent Network at the Regional Business Council. So that's great. First thing that I wanted to do is to talk a few moments about the immigration situation and the legal situation. And what I'm going to do is give you a few comments. I'm also going to be watching on the chat if you have any specific questions. And you're going to have a chance to ask questions in person as well. But I know often the international students don't want to put their videos on, but they will put comments in the chat. So we'll be monitoring both of those so that we can get to your questions. What I do see from the point of view of immigration and the visa situation, it's getting better with the new administration. There are still many hardships. Many of the consulates are still closed or only on emergency use, but we do see that the situation for our international talent is getting better. And that is going to be so important as you all look for using your CPT, your OPT, and for some of you possibly getting sponsored to stay in this country with an H-1B visa. I want to mention that one of the things we hear from our international students is that they're not always aware of the difference between OPT and OPT STEM. The optional practical training that all international students have allows you to stay 1 year to work. There is actually approval from your university with very amount of minimal work from an employer to have you be here for 1 year. If you have a designated STEM degree from your university, you can have an additional 24 months. The employer has to do a bit more work about a work plan, but that allows someone to be here 3 years of working. So for example, you may be at a university where economics is not STEM, but econometrics is STEM. And so if you don't understand that early on, you may not pick the major. It gives you 3 years of work opportunity, which will lead you to a better chance to get an H-1B visa into the future, which might allow you to have more time to be in this country and be part of our US talent. Sometimes there's an understanding that we have another visa called an O visa, which I always think of as outstanding. And that's one not sponsored by a university, but it's if you are very uniquely talented and have papers you've written that are peer reviewed around the world, and you may be in a very special, it might be cybersecurity, it might be something on a unique biological enzyme that you're working with. But if you have a unique technology and a way to prove it, an immigration lawyer might help you get an O visa, which would allow you to stay. The employers are getting a bit more interested now in talking to international talent. I think we're going to have a bit of a lag as we wait for our federal immigration laws to change. What we're seeing from our federal government is the first thing that the Biden administration is focusing on is the border situation, people crossing the border, the undocumented 11 million people in our country, the close to 1 million dreamers and the DACA students, and then the question of how many refugees will be coming. So these are things that are first on the new federal administration's agenda. So while I wish that opening the consulates, getting the international student visas, the H-1 visas, the H-4 visas, the work visas was first, it is not. But we do know that there is going to be strong desire from the business community that's already being very outspoken that we need the talent of our workforce. And I will tell you, and Ann may tell you this as well, it used to be that if a company couldn't get a visa, it might be difficult. They wouldn't be able to keep you, but now they may allow you to keep working for them from your home country because we've learned about work from home. So it's not as good for St. Louis, but it may be better for some of our companies. So that's what I wanted to tell you about immigration and visas and what we see right now. We see a faster processing time for some of the H-1B renewals, and we are hoping that this translates into better opportunities as you look at the workforce, particularly as you look at both virtual internships and as you look at the full-time market. With that, I'm going to let Ann talk a bit about what she sees in terms of hiring trends right now, both in our region and from her perspective as the global head of HR for Worldwide Technologies. So Ann, if you'd like to make some comments about the hiring trends that you see.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you guys for inviting me. This is just an honor. Kathy and I have known each other for a very long time, and whatever I can do to support Kathy and what she does, I'm always willing to. And yeah, Betsy's right. We've shared some experiences, if you will, here in the St. Louis area. So I'll give you a little bit of, about me. So I have been with Worldwide for 23 years. I started with the company when we had about 130 employees. I was with Enterprise Rent-A-Car prior to that. So I've had quite the journey for Worldwide. And when you look at the company where we are today, we have over 7,000 employees now globally. So when I started, we were just a St. Louis-based company. In fact, we only had 2 small little one-story buildings. Now, if you're in the St. Louis area and you drive on 270, you can see our building, which we used to occupy. It's empty now. But, so the company has grown significantly and we've grown globally. So we are definitely a global organization. In fact, the first location we went to globally was in Brazil. And now we have offices all over the world in Brazil, in Singapore, Amsterdam, London, China, India, I'm thinking Japan, lots of different places that I can't even remember all the places. But we have 12 different global locations, and it has been a great experience being with the company and Worldwide. And, the focus area for me and my team has been on growing a diverse workforce and providing all the things to support a growing organization through, our total rewards, benefits, and comp programs, training, and employee development. And we have a supplier diversity program, diversity and inclusion program. And we do have a lot of strategic partnerships with organizations that we are looking at to help us build a pipeline of diverse talent. And Kathy knows some of these, NPower, the National Academy Foundation, Launch Code, lots of different organizations, because not everyone is college bound, but we don't want to miss out on great talent. And so we really do look at thinking outside of the box in terms of how we can attract and retain the very best diverse talent. And so when I look at the landscape of where workforce is now, and Betsy mentioned it, everyone's virtual. We've been virtual a year now, which was unbelievable. We kind of celebrated, if you will, a year of, WebEx calls, Zoom calls, sitting in your socks and yoga pants from your kitchen table or wherever you're from. But it has been a journey, and one that I think none of us thought would last as long as it has. I mean, when I went back to the office after the first couple of months just to pick up some things, people had coffee cups with coffee still in it, or they had fruit on their desk because everyone thought, oh, we're just going to be gone a couple of weeks. But then you learn, and we learned how to work remote. Even all of us on the executive team, when our CEO sent out the note to work remote, we didn't think it meant us. And he said, wait a minute, it means us too. And everybody was scrambling. Okay, how do you do that WebEx again? And where's the unmute button? You learn from these things. And now it is just a way of life. And we've learned how to balance that, and the challenges that some people have had with work-life balance, with kids working remote and having to work and homeschool your kids, or you see dogs or kids in the background of a Zoom call. But it's part of life. You are part of looking into someone's home, and that's been kind of fun. But there's been challenges with that as well. But one thing that we have learned is from a virtual perspective, you can be anywhere. I'm right now in Chicago. Yesterday I was in St. Louis. So as long as you have really good Wi-Fi, you can really work from everywhere. We learned last year when we kicked off our internship program, it was virtual. And these students were working out of their homes, out of their dorms, wherever they were. And so you just learn how to do that. The other thing we learned is, especially now after doing this for a year, we have some individuals who want to stay remote. They have figured it out. Maybe they've invested in a home office setup. For some people, it provides work-life balance because we have people all over the world, and people in London or Boston or New York where they had hour and a half commutes to the office is eliminated. And they could work all day, and at 5 or 5:30, they could be done. They can close their laptops and be home. So they don't have an hour commute to get home. They can take their kids to baseball practice or whatever. And so some people, and then they don't have the cost of transportation. So that has been a windfall. And so as an organization, we have to look at the flexibility of that for our workforce. We have to look at the productivity. We've had the same or higher levels of productivity with people working remote. And to Betsy's point, you can work anywhere. We invested in a recruiting team in India. At first, it wasn't something that, some of the team was not as keen on, but we realized that, we could build a team out in India to help augment our talent acquisition team. And they can work in hours that our team can't work. So we almost have 24 hours, but we're supporting the business. We're accelerating what we're doing. And, they're as effective as they are in the US. And then we also realize that we have teams all over the country, all over the world, in London or Singapore or other locations, and they can be as effective. And in fact, I heard from some of our employees we have these listening tours or feedback sessions. Originally a lot of people said, well, things are different in St. Louis where headquarters are versus the rest of the country because all the executives are there. Now it's a level playing field, they said, because everyone is remote. And there isn't that, you were in the same building with executives, because everyone's on a virtual call. So it has leveled the playing field in terms of the ability to have access to people. And Kathy mentioned it early on. You can, call after call after call, but you're here. So you're on the call. So it's not like you have to fly somewhere or your transportation, you're going somewhere. And the accessibility to people is a lot greater because you just schedule a call. So the virtual world has really changed things. I know it has for our organization. And we want to keep that flexibility for our employees. And we've had a lot of employees that say, I want a hybrid. Maybe I want to be in the office whenever we open, which we don't know when that's going to be. Maybe I want a hybrid. Maybe I want to work 2 days from the office, but then I want to be remote for 3 days. Or maybe I just want to work remote. And if we don't consider the flexibility for our workforce, other companies will, and we'll lose people. And as long as the productivity and the employee engagement is still there, we're willing to invest in our employees because that's how important it is for us to get the very best talent. And we're not going to, not consider that and have other companies come in and take those resources. So I think we've learned a lot of things over this last year as an organization, as a HR team, how to support our teams virtually, what works, what doesn't work. I mean, it's still a learning process, but the other thing we've noticed is that we also have employees who live in parts of the country that maybe are very expensive and they maybe can't provide. We have a lot of people in the Bay Area and San Francisco who've requested to relocate to other parts of the country because the cost of living is cheaper. And they are asking, is that possible? Well, as long as you have good Wi-Fi in Nashville, I'm fine with that. So we've really, as an organization, evolved to the virtual world. And I think if you would have asked us, the team, this a year before this happened, no way, no way, it wouldn't have been possible. But this has made, you look at the horrible effects of the pandemic and what people have gone through. You got to look at some things that have opened our eyes in a lot of companies to what is possible and what success looks like.
Ann,
and success
Ann,
is different.
How do you think, Ann, that this might affect your openness to looking at talent that's international?
Oh, completely open.
How has that
Completely
changed?
open. Yeah, it's changed because, when we have been interviewing candidates, Betsy, it's all been virtual. And people have been in various different places in the world. And then we have onboarded hundreds of people virtually that we've never met in person. But, as long as you have a plan, as long as you have people who are engaged and, you have leaders that know how to continue to stay in touch with their teams. We've done training sessions. We have once a month, we had this, what we call the pathway, where we would bring employees who had been with the company for 90 days. We bring them into St. Louis from all over the world. We'd fly them into St. Louis and it would be a 2-day session. Our CEO would kick it off and we'd have all the executives and they would be, you know what? We do it virtual and it is as successful as it has been in person. Now, granted, we don't have a happy hour, but it still, and I challenge my team because they said, well, we can't do it. You're not going to have the same effectiveness. People are going to be engaged. I said, well, you know what? We need to at least figure it out. And they figured it out. And we have as high of attendance at that as anything else. And it's having the ability to understand how to engage people. And so we had people, I did one 2 weeks ago, we had people all over the world. Now, the only challenge we have sometimes is a time frame. We have people in Singapore, we have people in China, in London, Amsterdam. We have to come up with the right time to do things, that we're not making some people dial into a meeting at midnight or the others dial into a meeting at 5 a.m. Sometimes you have no choice. But I tell the teams, you have to be conscientious or maybe share that responsibility back and forth, so you're not imposing on one group without imposing on the other. It's possible. I think if you really think about it, it's possible.
So we'll come back to that because you mentioned the interviewing and Zoom interviews, and we'll come back to that when we kind of get into the how-tos and some tips and people's questions about how to do the interviewing now that it's a different world and what that's going to mean. I'm going to go to Emily. Emily did her interviewing and her networking when we were in real life, IRL, and not virtually. And I was so impressed with the way that Emily met people, the way she connected with people, the way she followed up. And so we wanted her to tell you her story about how hard it was being an international student and how there were many barriers and roadblocks, but that she overcame them. And again, I think what I want you to hear from her, and actually one of the people on this call actually wrote me a letter on LinkedIn yesterday and we connected, is you have to work really hard to make relationships and to connect and to be personable. And I call it being irresistible. You can't just be a good student. You can't just be the best student. You have to do things that are out of your comfort zone to break through the clutter so that someone like Ann or Kathy is going to notice you and say, wow, we need Emily. So Emily, you've got 5 minutes. Tell us your story and so that they'll see why I wanted you here.
Thank you, Betsy. Yes, I totally agree. As an international student, I think it's very, very important for us to be outstanding because you have to give employer a reason to hire you rather than hiring a U.S. citizen. So you have to give them a very strong like technical skill, communication skill to make sure you can really be very competitive and stand out when you are doing interviews. And for me, I started my like internship hunting very early. When I was in sophomore, I started going to career fair and just to learn about what's going on, what people are expecting, and what do I need to do. And I want to share a very funny thing is back then, nobody was teaching me that you're supposed to wear suits to career fair. So I was in like jeans and t-shirts when I went to career fair. And when I walked in, everyone was kind of looking at me. And I felt very weird, like, why am I getting all this attention? Until the next year, actually WashU has a very good career center that train international students to learn about everything in the US. And they told me that, yes, you have to wear a suit. No matter what other people are wearing, you have to dress at least in a suit. Some software company, they might not care too much, but it really, it kind of is a red flag when you don't wear a suit. So that's very important. It's to know what you're getting into, and also start early. So I was looking for summer internship the fall before that summer, and then I was looking for the winter internship the year before. So I don't know about other industries, but for at least for public accounting, for now, we're actually looking for fall internship. So everyone for the spring and summer internship were already hired back in fall last year. So if you really want to find some opportunities, you have to start early. It might not show up on your career center's career link, but on LinkedIn or Indeed, all those job hunt websites, they usually have many opportunities available there. And then for follow-up, that is very important. Back then, when I was in school, WashU Career Center, they told me that after an interview or after you met someone, make sure you follow up with them within 24 hours. Tell them how thankful you are and what you're thanking them for. And that really makes a big difference because I remember the first year I met one employer. I was a sophomore, so I wasn't eligible for an internship. But the second year I met him, he said they weren't hiring interns, but they were hiring full-times. So the third year when I go met that employer again, I didn't say any word. He remembered me from 2 years ago. And he said, there you are, fill out the form, and then let's do an interview. So when you start building up that relationship early on, it really will make a big difference later when you are actually looking for a job. And also from my own experience, I've helped a lot of international students looking for jobs when I was free. And one of those people who always follow up with me actually did get very good offers at the end, not just because they follow up with me, but also they know how to treat people in a very generous way and genuine way to build up the relationship. So I think it's very, very important to definitely follow up with anyone they've helped you, and just to say thank you and keep them posted when you actually get a job, because people really want to know what's going on. I've helped this person. I want to know if that person actually did great or not. So.
Great comments. One of the things that Emily said was, how do you build that relationship? And part of it is by following up and showing up and being there. Part of it is also finding common interests or common topics. So for example, in St. Louis, and I'm going to ask you to put something into the chat, it's important that you know what's going on so you can say, Betsy, it's interesting that this just happened in St. Louis. So what I want you to put in the chat is something about St. Louis that's happened in the last day or two that you could use to start a conversation with Ann or Emily or Kathy or Tina or myself. What's been in the news? What's good about St. Louis? What's something that was interesting, or that something that was opening, or someone that died, or something that happened? What's something that you could put in the chat that you might say, this is interesting, and I could start a conversation with Betsy about it because it was in the news? Put it in the chat. I'm going to look for people's comments, what you think you could start with to make conversation with one of us. I'm waiting for someone putting it in the chat. I see one, got a couple of other ideas about what could you start a conversation? Sports are always a good one. Food, restaurants. Yes, I see the mayor election coming up. That's a good one. Very important. The death of Bob Plager, again, really important. He was such an important part of our St. Louis history. St. Louis being named a top workplace for women. The weather, yeah, it's going to be stormy today. The vaccines, great. So these are really important things to say, how am I going to get Ann engaged in a conversation, or Betsy, with something interesting that's going on? definitely looking at the pictures of people lined up at the community college for vaccines today, really impressive, thinking about how this is going to change what we do. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the interview questions, kind of in a workshop type format. I'm going to have Ann and Emily answer some questions, and then I'm going to let you give some comments. What's the most important thing when you're doing a Zoom interview? Give me 2 or 3 things that are important. Ann and then Emily, what do you think is important in a Zoom interview in terms of what you do, how you look, what you say, how you prepare? Ann, what do you think?
Yeah, this is something that, my team, we've learned over the last year. First of all, you need to have the right lighting, because sometimes people get on Zoom calls and you can't see them, because you have to remember the light has to be in front of you, not in back of you. And a lot of times the lighting isn't such that you can see people. The other thing, and it's what Emily mentioned, don't get on a Zoom call with a t-shirt. I've seen it happen. You should approach that call like if you were in person. You should dress appropriately. And then you need to have your energy come through the video. It's different when you're in person. I get that. You have that handshake and you have that. You need to make the same eye connection in a Zoom call. You need to bring the same enthusiasm and energy as if you were sitting directly person to person in front of someone. That is really a differentiator. We had one of my interns told me about a story when they were interviewing someone, and they were basically on a recliner and they had their laptop propped on their chest. It's like, what? So you've got to think about those things. Just because you're on a call, that doesn't mean you let everything just fall by the wayside. You need to have the ability to still have the same energy, enthusiasm. It may be a little harder because you're on a call, but you really have to bring your A game, even though you're on a call.
Good points. Emily, what do you think is important? And I might even ask Kathy Osborne for a comment, since Kathy's on this a lot. But after Emily, maybe Kathy, you have a comment about how to have a good Zoom presence. Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the audio is very important. I participated in a couple recruiting events, and some people they don't have like the microphone by their mouth, and it's really difficult to hear them. Or some people was just in a very loud room, so you can hear dog barking, baby crying. I mean, it's really hard to really pay attention to the person you're actually talking to. And also, I think it's very important for international students to do mock interviews. It's not just for Zoom, but also in reality, because someone can really point out how you look, what your questions would go, and how you answer and present yourself. And if you couldn't find someone to do that, just use a camera and record yourself and practice. I think it's very important for us to be well prepared, and one of the ways to do that is to do mock interviews.
Great. Kathy, what do you think? You're talking to a lot of people.
Sure. I think one thing I would say is to look straight ahead or at the person on your little squares there. Don't look down. Now you might look down to write something or make a comment, but look up and try to establish some kind of eye contact. I think that long comments don't work really well in the Zoom environment. We're finding a lot of the meetings I used to have would be an hour and a half, and now almost all the meetings are an hour, and an interview might be a half an hour, for example. So be sure to speak briefly and address whatever questions asked. If you don't hear it, just ask for a clarification. And then I think if you know what the person's name, if they've said, and I'm Miss Marr or I'm Ann or whatever, use their name, and be sure before it ends. And this is the really important part, whether you're Zoom or not. If you're interested in the position, you should say, I'm very interested in the position. And then the final piece has to do with Zoom or not Zoom, which is this. If you're interviewing at Worldwide Technology, please understand what is Worldwide Technology. What do they do? It's not their job to explain to you who they are. So just do a little research and be prepared when you're on that interview. I do think the Zoom gives more people more opportunities right now. And you may be on a Zoom call with 3 or 4 other candidates. and just be respectful of, you know, their time as well. So thank you.
Yeah, Kathy, that's a good point. You know, you'd be surprised how many people we talk to and they ask us, so tell me about worldwide technology. Now,
Yeah.
you know, tell me about the job, tell me about, okay, but tell me about the company.
Right.
You know, you can Google us. You know, I love when people are telling us about the company, telling us about things that they've read, telling us that we're one of the 100 best companies to work for. That's impressive. But when they ask us to tell them about the company, we just shake our heads.
Yeah, I would build on that. One of the things you can do is look from your own university, who from the university works at Worldwide Technology, and send them a note on LinkedIn and, you know, learn a little bit about the company before you are in that interview. And often your alumni connections are one of the most powerful. I want to build on something that Kathy said about eye contact. You know, I'm looking at the camera, I'm not looking down at your tiles. And often what I do when I'm giving a talk is I put up sticky pads. I put notes up at the top of my computer. So I'm looking up and not looking down. It's very important that you have that eye contact and that you remember to do it. I think that Kathy's comment about why you want the job is so important. And I think a lot of our international students they're humble, they're modest, and they don't want to be too pushy. But you have to really think about that, how that comes across. And one of the things I recommend is that you remember to have a very good closing statement that you've practiced in advance, so that you say, you know what to say, such as, I think I would be terrific for Worldwide Technology for these 2 reasons, and I really want to work for you. And practice it so that you have a good closing sentence, because often the interviewer will say, is there anything else, Emily? And then you can give your sentence. If you just say, no, nothing, I'm done, it's kind of a downer. But if it says, I really want to work for you, it's a really strong closing, good, positive note. I want to ask about questions, and I see some questions in the chat that I will get to in a moment. Talking about virtual internships, whether there are opportunities to have an internship or a virtual internship. How do you find out about those? Ann, what do you think?
I think about Worldwide, and it's similar to what Emily said. We kick off our internship program in the fall for the following year. So I've had some students ask me about internships for this year, asked me about an internship. I said, you mean 2020 closed on December 15th of 2020. So we have already interns scheduled to start. And so I think if you're looking for an internship, I think it depends on what you want to do and what company you want to work for. And you should research that company. And most companies are going to have those online. You can go on their websites and they'll have information about an internship. And but my advice is to start early. If you're looking for an internship for next year, I'd say right after the summer, probably August timeframe, you should start looking, because most companies, ours included, will be posting things on how to apply. We usually do that right when the interns are leaving, and we post, either coming soon, the application process will open on this date, but we always post things out there. But I think you should really think about what companies you want to work for, and then do your research. And if you have a list saying, hey, I'm going to apply to all of these companies, instead of saying, well, I'm just going to apply to this one because that's the only, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. List the companies you want to work for, list why you want to work for them, and what you want to do based on what the companies do, and then start your process early.
Emily, what do you think? What are you seeing? What are you seeing at your firm?
Yeah, I agree with Ann, because we started our internship recruiting last year, and we actually just finished our winter internship today. So definitely need to start early. And also I would highly recommend, as international student, we can find volunteer opportunities throughout the year. So we don't have to wait for summer or winter for an actual internship, because it's always, they would ask you the first question, do you have prior work experience? Well, I don't. That's why I'm looking for an internship. But then we need your prior working experience to give you an internship. It's like egg or chicken, who comes first? But so I think it's very important to get a volunteer experience at least, so you can at least show the employer that you have certain qualifications that they're looking for, you actually have, and you can use very specific examples to tell them, yes, I'm pay attention to detail. Here's the example. I did this volunteer, and this is what I did. And also, that's also a good opportunity to build up a relationship with your supervisor or your teammates during the volunteer work. So, and also that's not limited with your OPT. So you can use a CPT to do volunteer. Certain volunteers, I don't know the legal regulation around those, but I think they don't even require CPT to do volunteer. And also it just shows that you're a genuine person, that you want to invest in the society, you want to give back to the society. So I think it's really good for resume building and also build up your own qualifications.
Kathy, what would you add?
I could answer Jorge's question, which is in the chat, and I'd be curious to see what Ann and Emily think, and Betsy, what you think. But it's a good question. He's asking, should we use, if you're going to be interviewed, should you use their first and last name or approach them with Mr. and he has Mrs. So what I would say is, and let me give you this example. The mayor of the city of St. Louis came to see me. I've worked with her for a long time. I know her very well. Whenever we're in a meeting, I call her Mayor or Madam Mayor. It's a respectful title, so I use that. If I was going to be interviewed today by Ann Marr, I would probably say Miss Marr, MS Marr. She can then say, oh, please call me Ann. Right. But better to go formal, and then if the person says, feel free to call me this name, then go ahead and do that. So I think being more formal is better. It also shows a respect. Somebody like Ann and Betsy, they've been working for many, many years in these positions, so they deserve a degree of respect. So that would be my comment there. It might be a little old-fashioned, but I tend to think that that's probably the better way to go. The same with attire. I always dress professionally attired, and later they can say, we're going to introduce you to the team, and by the way, feel free to come and whatever. Or you'll notice everybody in the office is dressed. But I think most people expect somebody who's applying for a job to dress in some professional manner, whatever that means for you.
I completely agree, Kathy, with both of your points on the, the addressing someone as a Mr. or Miss until they say, please call me Ann. And the attire, I mean, Emily knew that from going to the career fair, right? You learned that lesson and you never repeated that again, because you should always put your best foot forward and respect where you are and let them say, oh, it's not necessary to wear a suit or whatever the case may be. But you felt very uncomfortable because you looked around and you saw you weren't dressed appropriately.
I'll have another little comment. This might be a little controversial, but for those of you who go to Wharton University in particular, I'm going to give you a little tip. Don't think you're better than somebody else. So a very eager student at a university that might not be in the same prestige category as Wharton University may interview better because if you think about a company, no company wants to hire somebody who thinks they're smarter than everybody else there. So how you may be the smartest person they'll interview, but it's important to come across that you can work with other people.
Completely agree with that, Kathy. I mean, you have to be a team player, and it's great that you went to a prestigious university, but at the end of the day, you still need to be able to work with people. And, if they don't feel that you're open to working with all kinds of different people, young, old, different colors, different races, they're going to think that you're not willing to be flexible and you're not a team player. And so if you have that attitude, they're going to think it's the same in every aspect of your personality.
I'm going to
I want to, oh, sorry. I want to
go
add
ahead,
one
Emily.
more thing. It's to be respectful to every single person you've met. I've heard so many bad stories that people only build up relationship with HR recruiters, but didn't really talk to the person that stand right next to that person, but actually who are making the hiring decisions are the people standing next to the HR or recruiters. So not just only say hi to the HR or say a thank you note to the HR and recruiter, but also whoever you've met that day, you interacted with. If you happen to pick up something from the front desk, be respectful to those people too, because you really don't know how and who is really making the decision.
Yes, I think people are being watched all the time. If you have a specific question about the interview process, put it in the chat and we will answer it. I want to ask a question about how do you build rapport with the interviewer? And sometimes we've just done interviews in our organization where 3 of us are on the screen interviewing one person. How do you build rapport in real life, or how do you build rapport when you're in a Zoom call? How do you make that happen? And what do you think? Because it's not a cold discussion. It's got to be warmed up. How do you recommend that international students warm up the discussion?
It's what you talked about earlier. Some of those points you can, it's almost like little icebreakers. You know, boy, isn't the weather great out there? You know, boy, what do you think about what happened with this blues player? Or, you know, boy, COVID is really causing, you know, anything like that. And people will gravitate and engage in a discussion. And it kind of breaks down a little bit of a barrier. It's a little bit of an icebreaker. And you have an opportunity to have a connection with someone. Or if you know, say, oh, hey, I heard you're from New Orleans. That's a place that I've visited, or something like that. I think you have to find a way to use it as an icebreaker, but it also allows you to create a rapport with someone.
Kathy, what do you think?
I think what Emily said applies to Zoom meetings, which is to be respectful of everybody you come in contact with. Truthfully, typically looking for a job is a very stressful kind of thing. So we're not exactly in our most curious best because it makes you nervous. Pretend like you're an actor. So you're playing this part, this role of trying to apply. So smile when you don't really feel like smiling. But like security guards, when you come in, if there's a front desk, be very respectful. Because truthfully, in companies, all they have to do is pick up the phone and say, so-and-so's coming up, and they seemed really unfriendly, or they tried to walk by the desk. So I think Emily brings up a very good point. And certainly anybody, when you're on a call, if there is 2 or 3 people, and let's say Ann is the most senior person, recognize that the person who may not have ever asked you a question could be ultimately your supervisor. Mm-hmm. I always try, and typically I'm in a lot of situations where I know a number of the people, but I try to show respect to everybody that's on that call. So everybody gets off and say, you know, I like that person. I can see them being here. Because at the end of the day, they have to imagine you working for them. It's your skill, but can I see that person? Do I want to work with that person every day? And that to me goes across cultures. Just as I have to come out of my comfort zone to smile when I'm with the governor because I'm really nervous, do you know what I'm saying? The same way in these situations.
And Kathy, I like your point about the security guard. We would have our receptionist at the front desk would be our gauge. And if someone greeted her with kindness and respect, or at least talked to her, she would call up and say, hey, yeah, they're very nice. And they at least acknowledge me instead of just walking past. She would always provide us with feedback on candidates that would come through the front desk.
I bet that's very surprising for these international students to hear. We have a couple of questions in the chat that I'd like to get to. One is about how do I know which position to apply for if my major is very broad, such as international business? So how do you know what's the best job to apply for? What do you think? Ann, what's your thought on that when people have
Well,
broad skills?
yeah, that's a little hard because you can just say international, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's all sorts of positions that are part of our international. You have to narrow that down a little bit. If you say, hey, marketing, or if you say, finance or something, just to say international, if you look on the website, there's not going to be a position that just says international. So you're going to have to think about something specific that you want to go into. Now, you can certainly say, I'm interested in, international accounting or something like that. But I think just to say international, that's going to be hard.
Yeah, I tend to recommend that you really have to have a function that you're interested in. You have to come in functionally and then bring your international interest as a secondary, because there are not jobs, unless you're in Washington, D.C., maybe at a think tank or something, or on a staff position. There really are no jobs that are posted for international,
right.
In general. There's a question from Jorge about your favorite question to be asked by an interviewee. If someone is coming to interview with me, what's my favorite question for them to ask me? Kathy, what do you think? What if someone has done a good job and then you get to the point, what would you like them to ask you?
Let me pass on that for the moment. I think, first off, I think it's always better to ask a question than not. But I think asking specific questions about how much does this job pay, those kind of detailed things, that's usually issues for the second or third interview. So I really wouldn't do that. Certainly showing inquisitiveness about the job. This job is very interesting to me. And I think my skills in marketing could be very helpful. What other skills might you be looking for? Something of that sort. And on the international business, Ann was right on with that. And, for me, now I do everything fast. And now computers are looking at a lot of your resumes, so it's not even a person. So you want to have the right words. But sometimes you find that somebody might have a general category, but when you look down, they've done all their coursework in marketing or accounting, or they're technology experts. So I think, or they belong to diversity and inclusion activities, or they're head of the Asian society at their school. I might be looking for somebody who has those connections, and might be looking in our HR office for somebody. So anyway, I think making sure there's those words that can be pulled out that can cue people to take a look at what you're doing.
Ann, what's your thought about questions? And then also maybe address what you think is the importance of LinkedIn and alumni connections.
Yeah. Well, LinkedIn is great. You definitely want to update your LinkedIn profile and indicate the schools that, or the organizations that you're a part of, either currently or alumni. The question I like when people ask me, why do you like working at Worldwide Technology?
Yeah, right.
Why do you like working there? I mean, I asked that question, why do you like working there? That's being inquisitive, but it's also being thoughtful about what do you like about that? Because you got to remember, when they're interviewing you, you should interview the company to make sure it's a place you want to work. And it aligns with your professional and personal values, because you may get to a situation, you start working for a company, you go, oh my God, I don't want to work here. So it's a two-way street. Don't assume that just because you're interviewing with them, they're not, you have to interview them as much as they interview you. So be inquisitive about why do you like working there?
Emily, what was your best question as an interviewee?
I agree with Ann. That is my favorite question. When someone asks me, why do I work for UHY, I can go on for hours and tell them all the amazing things that I want to share with them. And also they can ask what you're looking for in this specific job function, like the skill set, because then you can really know what you can work towards it. So even though you might not get the position, you might not get the job, you might still be able to work towards it and know what employers are looking for. Or if that's something you already have, it's great for you to add on to make a strong ending to say, yeah, I'm perfect for this job because that's what you're looking for and that's what I have.
That's a good point. What I recommend is making sure that you have a file folder, like a brown portfolio that you bring in with you, that you have 2 copies of your resume on paper in case I want to hand one to Ann in the next office, and that you have 5 good questions that you've written down before you walk in the door. Because if I say, what are your questions, Emily? And you go, don't know. So be prepared when the interviewer asks you. To wrap up, I'm going to ask Ann and Emily and Kathy, a final piece of advice in today's job market. What should these international students be thinking about? Ann, I'll start with you.
Just think about the companies you want to work for. I think that's the most important thing. Think about, what are their current and future, what do they do as an organization? But think about, what do you think would be future opportunities for you at those companies? And so if it's something global and you want to make sure that they have a global presence because that's a long-term interest, but you just think about the companies you want to work for. That's the most important thing to me.
Oh, it's my turn. I have 3 major things. One is to be open-minded. Don't say no to any potential opportunity. Apply if you see you're fit. A lot of people don't apply when they think they are underqualified, but most of the employer would say some candidates are overqualified for the job. So don't miss out the opportunity just because you didn't want to be open-minded and didn't apply. And then I want to say, take advantage of all the resources that you have, the Career Center on campus, the alumni network, and LinkedIn, to build up a relationship and help you do with your mock interview or resume critique. Do everything that you can to get the opportunity. And third, it's to get some experience. No matter it's volunteer, it's a research assistant, or an internship, it doesn't matter what you do. It really matters is the qualifications that you can show through those opportunities, and then you can build up your resume and really tell them who you are during your next interview.
Great ideas. Kathy, do you have a thought?
I think when the interview's over, if you are interested, to write an email back.
Yeah.
That are there, and express your interest, why you're interested, and what you think you'd bring to the table. A paragraph, not a page. That always really impresses me. And I think Emily alluded to this, but sometimes it'll be a no to a certain, I'll pick somebody else. And then maybe 3 months later, I'll think to myself, I really liked Emily. Something else came up. Can somebody pull out her resume? I'd like to give her a call back. And that's all because of how she handled the no.
Right.
I've had people who want to argue about it. So, how they handle the no and how they handle themselves in the interview. So keep in mind that no isn't always the end. It's the end maybe for the moment, but they're looking for how you handle that.
Yeah.
I will tell you, if I had 2 equal candidates and one person wrote me back a note and told me how much that they thought they were really qualified and really wanted the job, I'm going to tell you who I'm going to go with. All other things be equal, I'm going to go with the person who said, hey, I really want to work for you.
Yeah. Great.
We did have one question, which is a tough one, which was this question of applications online when they ask if you need sponsorship. Them is a yes or no, but if they're asked, the only way around that, and I will tell you honestly, the companies in St. Louis that say they do not sponsor visas, I know every one of them, if they have found someone irresistible, they have created a job that has unique skills and international orientations. And if you are truly irresistible, there are ways that companies will go to bat for you. But in general, they may say they don't sponsor. And do you want to have a factual answer?
Yeah, I agree, but you should say if you need sponsorship, you need to make that clear, because it's going to feel like you're being disingenuous. So you should say that. And most companies, to your point, if you're a good candidate, they're going to sponsor you. I mean, we let them go because, to be honest and upfront, that you do need sponsorship, in my opinion.
But I do think in today's world, these companies like worldwide technology, they're going to allow people to work from somewhere else if they can't make it work.
Absolutely.
They're going to want the talent. So it's
We're going to
better time for
figure it
you.
out.
There's a better time for you than ever before. So with that,
Right.
I want to particularly thank Kathy and Tina from the Regional Business Council. I want to thank Emily for sharing her personal advice, and thank Ann Marr. And thanks to all of you. You are wonderful, talented individuals that are part of our university here. And we want you badly to bring your talent, keep your talent here. And thank you very much. So reach out to any of us if you have further questions, but thank you to the Regional Business Council to putting this on with us. And I also appreciate my colleagues, Bomi Park and Jorge, who is our intern, and he has been a great intern, international student from Spain, and it's been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for coming.